District, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? We are back in the GOAT District for the Week 8 playbook. And aside from my man Dan, who joins me on a weekly basis, you know him as the Overripe Sleeper, no E on the end. We have a monster guest for you guys today. One of the best in the games. We grew up to love him in the player profiler world. Now he's been just rocking it on the X machine, prop bets, matchup, data, anything you want to help you on a weekly basis in the fantasy world, in the sports betting world. And we wanted to bring him in this week, big week this week. Buy-mageddon, is that what they call it? Is that what the kids are calling it these days?
I believe that is it.
Josh Larky, brother, welcome back to the GOAT District. We're pumped to have you, man.
JD, Dan, thank you. This is like appearance number 8 or something over the last 5-6 years. It feels
I was just trying
really
to think.
Good.
That's right. That's right. You were up there with Daigle, I think. It was like you and Daigle kind of going head to head.
Yep. No doubt about it. Yeah, so this is awesome. Been too long for sure.
It has. And I see you guys in the chat. We got the Snowman in there. We've got Nick, Go Bills in the house. Make sure you guys drop your questions tonight. We'll be answering your questions. We got a lot to talk about. Obviously, I mentioned buy-mageddon. We got a lot of teams on buy this week. So it's going to be definitely interesting on managing your rosters, getting set up for Week 8. We're going to talk a bit, obviously what happened in Week 7 and roll it into the new weekend to get you guys ready for it. Whether we talk waivers, we'll be talking buys, sells, trades, all of that goodness. And let's start it off in Carolina. I'm going to go to you first, Josh. Bryce Young is out this coming week, as we know so far, with his ankle injury. Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket, comes in and gets the start. We saw this past weekend after Rico went off against his old team in Dallas, more or less splitting it with Chuba. Chuba was coming off the injury, but Rico did get some more touches. He put up, the bigger numbers. And then you've got Dan's favorite, the Coke machine, Coker, back from the IR. Tet, a bit of a down week this week. Is there anyone that Fantasyland or our audience can trust, whether it's starting, to start this week as we get into this important week, Josh?
So we'll start at the running back position. I still like Rico Dowdle. He out-carried Chuba Hubbard 17-14. He out-produced him on the ground 79 to just 31 yards. It's pretty hard for me to see the split flipping more in Chuba's favor after that last week. If anything, maybe Dowdle gets more looks against Buffalo. I just dropped on Twitter/X today some yardage prop betting type matchup charts, and Buffalo has allowed 28 more rushing yards to running backs than expected this year. Carolina's been effective running the ball. That seems to all point towards Dowdle. And then I am still firing up Teteroa McMillan. I've got him in 2 leagues. He's starting in both of them. I think Andy Dalton locks onto him. If we look at last year when Dalton came in, last year, Dalton's first 2 games, which kind of blew me away since it feels like this should have been like 4 years ago, but it was the Deontay Johnson show. As recent as last year, Dalton force-fed him 14 and then 13 targets in his first 2 games back. We often see that from backup quarterbacks. They latch onto their top option. I think McMillan gets that treatment this week.
Yeah, almost like a nice buy window for Tet, maybe in Dynasty, Dan. Deontay Johnson, Dan, I'm getting flashbacks of that dispersal draft we did this offseason. I remember, grabbing Deontay, hoping he might bounce back. But man, that guy just talk about a quick drop off in football, fantasy, whatever you want to call it, just career wise. Dan, I'm going to go to you and talk Raiders. Raiders offense. I mean, you could call them broken at this point. I know they've been labeled irrelevant in some of the power rankings out there. Geno even got benched, and Geno was a guy that we thought was a nice value coming into the season. One of those late round quarterbacks. He had some weapons there. They brought in Gianti, the rookie running back. You got the new regime coming in with Pete Carroll, and there were some high hopes in Vegas. It hasn't worked out so far. Is there anyone worth trusting? Either on your, roster dynasty, obviously the obvious players, but redraft, are there guys that are trustworthy on your roster or even in your starting lineup moving forward?
I mean, I think when they come back, you've got no choice but to trust Bowers if you took him in redraft. Who else do you have, I guess, is, that you would be using would be the question. Hopefully you've been kind of developing a little stable of tight ends to go along with Bowers. But, if Bowers is healthy, you're going to throw him right back in your lineup because you got to figure that he's going to be the number 1 target in that offense. They're looking to potentially trade away Jacoby Myers. Myers hasn't been very shy about the fact that he's still looking to get traded out of there or sign a new extension or whatever, but he just doesn't like his current situation. And you have to wonder how much his injury situation that he's had this last week really has to do with the contract and the upcoming trade deadline. That might be what the thing is there. So Jack Beck is somebody that I'm trying to grab here and there, where I've got room on my roster. I think he's a good one to just kind of hang on to because he would probably slide into the Jacoby Myers role if Jacoby Myers ends up going elsewhere. But other than that, you're basically going with Genty, you're going with Brock Bowers, and probably not much else that I would feel comfortable with starting.
Yeah, it's frustrating because even Michael Mayer flashed last week. They're on bye, obviously, this week, and then versus Jacksonville, at Denver, at home to Dallas, at home to Cleveland, the next 4 matchups. So we'll see if they can bounce back somehow. Maybe, I don't know. It's one of those where you think, hey, Geno's maybe learning a new offense, but it's not necessarily, he's with his old pal Pete Carroll out there. So we'll see if they can bounce back and give us some fantasy value. Josh, on the other side of that, the Colts, maybe one of the biggest surprises, if not the biggest surprise this year. The offense is just on fire. Every time you turn on Red Zone, you see Jonathan Taylor running in for a touchdown, lately these weekends, and looking like a league winner out there in Indy. Do you think this is sustainable rest of the season? And are there any sell high candidates that you see in this roster?
Yeah, I had to think a lot about this one. And I think we should start with the schedule. So they've had a fairly easy schedule to begin this year. It really starts to get tougher in week 10. I'm just going to read week 10 through week 17. Atlanta, bye. Chiefs, Texans, at Jacksonville, at Seattle, 49ers, Jaguars. The Jaguars defense has been a little better this year than advertised, and then it's like Niners defense, fine. Seattle's defense has looked pretty good. The Texans defense has looked really good. The Chiefs, the Falcons, there's just a lot of significantly harder matchups upcoming. So I would lean towards holding or slightly selling the non-Jonathan Taylor Colts. And you might be like, that doesn't make sense. You don't like their games. They might lose some of those games. Why would you like the running back? So I think the calculus is different when we have a league winner on our hand. Jonathan Taylor right now is a top 3 overall fantasy asset. I don't want to give him up. But if we look at the overall Colts, not only is the schedule getting harder, but Daniel Jones has a long history of both injuries and bad quarterback play. I think bad quarterback play, the chance of that obviously rises a little bit when the competition's harder. However, I'm not super concerned necessarily with that fully, just because, the supporting cast is better. It's more just the late season schedule mixed with his injury history, and I also think the Colts are just playing out of their mind. When you watch the Colts games, you kind of keep thinking like they can't keep getting away with this. They can't keep getting away with this. So I'm fine shopping the Colts, but not JT. And I'll give a parallel. I'd say let's think about Puka Nacua. You could say, oh, the Rams are risky. Matthew Stafford's back. I myself have had 2 back surgeries in the past 14 months. It freaking blows. I cannot believe Matthew Stafford is still playing football. But let's say that we thought Matthew Stafford has a 50% chance of injury this year. Terrifying on paper. Or I could reframe that as, hey, if you have Puka Nacua, you have a 1 in 2 chance of the bona fide league winner. What are you doing? You want to get first place out of 12 teams? That's kind of my roundabout way to say, yes, JT, I think, is simply just too valuable right now, where I'm kind of throwing everything else out. But someone like Pittman, I would definitely be looking to sell. I think Tyler Warren's more of a hold, just knowing how rookies kind of trend up oftentimes as the season moves along. But I'd say Pittman and Daniel Jones would be the 2 where I'd consider shopping, or at least start to throw out feelers. Jonathan Taylor, I'm just keeping him.
Yeah,
Warren,
I mean,
you're not.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, you're not going to sell any of these guys for peanuts or anything like that. So to be clear, you need to get a good return if you're going to sell any of these guys. I'm probably a little bit less worried than Josh is. They've already played Denver. They've already played the Rams. So they've got a couple tough defenses that they've gone up against and done pretty well against. So, but I do, the whole Daniel Jones thing, I'm kind of a little bit spooked by it, as Josh is, just because we have seen a lot of bad quarterback play from Daniel Jones. And if you think about it, okay, so Jackson Dart takes basically the same offense that Daniel Jones had in New York, and Dart is making it look fantastic. And we saw what Daniel Jones did there, which was just absolutely atrocious. So I'm kind of waiting for everything to sort of fall apart around Jones, his mechanics or whatever. Just for him to kind of fall back into those old habits. And maybe he won't. Maybe he's he's this year's Baker, or Geno Smith was once upon a time there. We do see Sam Darnold, quarterback resuscitation projects, and that could be the case for Daniel Jones, but it also could be the case that he could just fall apart too.
Snowman, I see your Manungai comments. We're going to be talking about the young running back a little later on in the show. So stay tuned. Guys, keep the questions dropping in the chat. We'll be answering those. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as we bring you the goodness on the weekly playbook. Dan, a couple offenses that stumbled going into the bye. Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills, even surprisingly. They're back this week. The Bills go to Carolina. The Ravens are, what was it again? I just had it in front of me and I lost it.
The Ravens.
They're at home. Chicago. They're at home to Chicago. They're at home to Chicago, who has been looking pretty good. The Bears, that is, as an offense. Are there any buy lows right now, or breakout stashes, or kind of post buy risers in either of these offenses that you're looking at right now as we go into Week 8?
I mean, I think for Baltimore, you've got to be looking at Justice Hill or Keaton Mitchell, just on the fact that Derrick Henry hasn't looked the greatest since Week 1. I can certainly come up with a lot of excuses why that might be, and a lot of them start with the fact that Lamar has not been there for a couple weeks. But even before Lamar went out, he still wasn't looking all that great. So those are a couple that I would definitely get a hold of. I'm still not convinced that Lamar is going to be back this week. He's practicing right now. That's a good sign, but I guess I'm kind of in the, I'm a little nervous about it. I'll believe it when I see it. And if that's the case, then Justice Hill might, he might have at least low-end flex appeal right off the bat. And in Buffalo, I mean, they've got to open up that passing game a little bit more. They just have not been, they've been trying to run the ball on everybody. When it doesn't work, they seem to be like they're out of answers, because they don't really have an alpha receiver. So I think that they need to try to figure out how they can either get a hold of an alpha receiver, or maybe they need to double down on Keon Coleman, use him a little bit more. They used him week 1 and he looked really, really good. I think he's kind of a limited player, but they've got to get something going, So if I'm going to take a stab at anybody, I think Keon Coleman, his stock has been beat up over the past few weeks. He's somebody that you might be able to pick up for a low cost. And, I would hold him for a few weeks and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with Wheeler and with you, Dan. I think the Ravens, there are some pieces that you can add to your, if you have the opportunity right now, especially with Henry. I even like Likely as like a sneaky add as a tight end. He came back from injury prior to the bye. You hope that they come back from the bye. I mean, you kind of scared me with Lamar because I was hoping he'd be back this week, but I know there's no guarantees so far. So if you have Lamar on your roster and maybe your other quarterbacks on bye, make sure you've got a backup plan. Seeing a lot of Joe Flacco deals out there in fantasy land. Dan, I know you got one done earlier today, I think, in a triflex. But anything to add, Josh, with the Buffalo and Baltimore teams?
2 quick things. I like Keon too. He's still just 22 and a half, not even 22 and a half years old yet.
Yeah, we forget that.
So he's so young. He turned 22 middle of May, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I haven't looked today, but yesterday the Ravens were favored against the Bears. That leads me to believe there is at least some optimism Lamar comes back. Betting markets have been completely wrong on this type of stuff before, but I think there's at least optimism in that sense.
Yeah, I feel like with Harbaugh manning the ship, they use that bye, efficiently to get this thing back on track. Josh, we talked about bye-mageddon. Week 8, heavy bye week. You've got Lions, Raiders, Cardinals, Rams. How should high-stakes managers handle lineup gaps and waiver strategy this week? Any sneaky pickups or any tricks that you can give the listeners as they juggle around their starting lineups?
Yeah, I'll keep this one short and then pass it back to you guys in case you want to add anything. I don't have some silver bullet like, oh yeah, this guy's widely available. He's going to get you 20 points this week. My advice would be, A, don't drop a valuable stash for a guy that you think will get you 6 points this week. Fantasy matchups are often decided not by just 6 points. They're often decided by 20 points. So I would just say, control what you can control. I think the cheap waiver strategy that I'd have here, I just did my FFPC waivers this morning. And I think there's some edges to be gained with streaming and swapping defenses this week. That is an actionable, easy way to get a few points on your roster. Atlanta hosts Miami after facing the Niners last week. Their defense has been very good. The Bengals defense has been unplayable, but hey, they have a Jets team without Garrett Wilson. I think there is no team trending worse right now than the Jets. Maybe the Raiders, probably the Jets. Buffalo gets Carolina coming out of their bye, and it's Dalton. These are all easy options. The Buccaneers were probably dropped in a lot of leagues. They faced the Lions last week. Now they get the Saints. The Colts get the Titans after the Chargers last week. So I think there's a lot of surprisingly good options where some managers out there who have a defense that has been underperforming, it is time to start streaming. This is a good week to do it. I think you can get a few points here without losing some upside running back stash or whatnot. So I would go the defense route.
Dan, anything to add? I know Tez, we've got Wheeler talking about Tez. I know Leggett is a favorite coming into this week just with his 11 target game in Carolina. Anyone to add or any tips? I like those tips from Josh there.
Yeah, and Josh is exactly right. I mean, basically defense, the way I generally play it is I stream until I hit the dream, and so if I haven't hit the dream yet, then I'm still going with the streaming. And it usually seems like right around this time, weeks 6, 7, 8 is where I kind of land on a defense that hopefully has already had their bye and they've got a pretty good schedule moving forward, or maybe their bye isn't for several more weeks yet, and I can kind of get off the streaming thing. But Josh is exactly right. If you don't have a really good defense, I mean, picking up those defensive points is very, very important. I was trying to do the same thing at kicker, and it's just a little bit tough to do right now because a couple of the situations are uncertain. Like, I'm not sure who the Bears kicker is going to be. I'm not sure who Buffalo's kicker is going to be. I'm not sure who Green Bay's kicker is going to be. So that makes it a little bit tough to pick those up right now, but that's something I'm looking at for the second waiver run when we have a little bit more idea of, are any of these kickers coming back, or is it going to be, the substitute kicking again? But those are teams where I'm interested in their kicker. So that's a good one too. You want to just kind of look through and just analyze how teams are going about handling their own losses. Like, obviously Tez in Tampa Bay, that's a great one by Wheeler. I grabbed a bunch of Tez shares last week. There's a few more this week that I have the opportunity to grab, so I'm going to try to get them as well. I think Dalton Schultz is a really good one because we're looking at probably Nico Collins missing this week since he got a concussion in the late game on Monday night. I don't see pretty much any way that he's likely to come back for Sunday game. So I think, with him out and with Christian Kirk out, Dalton Schultz, we saw what he did against Seattle. He's just kind of the easy button. And I think that, they're going to be using him an awful lot. And then we also saw Jalen Noel used an awful lot. So I think Noel's a good pick as well. And just be looking for those kind of things. If you're not playing in tight end premium, probably Rondé Gadsden's pretty widely available. He's a pick I like a lot because you know what? He's a real mismatch, especially when you've got those other 3 wide receivers out there all taking up defensive attention, and they're trying to figure out, okay, who do we have left to put on Gadsden? And then Gadsden is just like, he can be a monster down the seam. So I think he's a fantastic pickup. So just be looking, and don't always go for the obvious answers, but like Josh said, you don't want to be throwing away a Luther Burden to grab a Sterling Shepard, for example. I would much rather hold on to Burden and just take whatever points I can get out of Burden this week. And then, hopefully he's one of those players that blows up, because Sterling Shepard, we know what he is. He's never blowing up.
Yeah, if you're in a league with me, there's no way Gadsden's out there. We 2 or 3 weeks ago, I mean, I was just pounding the table for anyone who saw him on waivers to pick him up. It was, Dan, sometimes that gut just keeps hitting you, telling you this is going to be a league winner type of guy. And I'm glad I have him on a lot of my tight end premium, especially my FFPC teams right now. So hopefully he can keep that going moving forward in that offense. I know Wheeler talking about Jalen Noel. He looked actually surprisingly better than Higgins even in Houston this week. I know Higgins, a lot of people's favorite coming in as the rookie duo out there in Texas. And then let's talk a bit of Bucks. They kind of came flat against Detroit this past week, Dan. Mike Evans, unfortunately, looks like he's back on the injury list. Had just come back and, concussion, and I think he hurt his shoulder.
Broke
He's
collarbone.
on IR.
Was it collarbone? Yeah,
today.
there you go.
Yeah, he got put on IR with the collarbone.
Okay. So he's out for a while again. what pieces can we trust in our starting lineups moving forward? I know they have the Saints this week. They go to the Saints, they're on bye, and then they play New England at home and then on the road against Buffalo and the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, Rashad White is still going to be the starting running back there, and probably a lot of the offense is going to go through him. I have plenty of faith in Baker. I think it was just a really, they ran into a buzzsaw. I think they were expecting the passing game to be able to work a lot easier than what it did. And Baker just looked rattled after, especially, he looked rattled all night, but I thought especially after Evans went out, he looked a little bit even more rattled. And, I'm sure that's not going to be the case this week. So I like, obviously, Egbuka, and I already mentioned Tez Johnson. I think that's the other player I'm really high on starting. Like I say, I'm not going out there picking up Sterling Shepard. I'm not going out there picking up Cam Johnson. If you've got Cade Otton, he's definitely worth a look as well. But I'm going to be careful how deep I go on that Bucs offense.
Do you guys know if Wheeler's asking? I don't think Bucky's back this week, is he?
No. Nope. They said he's not going to play this week, so I think they're planning on holding him out through the bye, and then which is week 9, and hopefully week 10 we see him back. But even that I'm not sure of. It always seems like it takes these injured players longer to come back than what we think or hope. All you have to do is look at Terry McLaurin, and great example right there.
Josh, I'm going to come back to you, and we're going to come back to rookie tight ends. We saw Terrence Ferguson got his first touchdown this past week. He's starting to run more routes. Can he become more fantasy relevant rest of the season, or do you think this is just kind of a McShay finding other pieces to fill in the Puka Nacua absence? Oh, you're on mute. Oh.
All right.
There you go.
Well, I'm not super interested in Terrence Ferguson. He ran 12 routes to Higbee's 10 last week. Puka Nacua was also out. I don't think Higbee's going anywhere. A pretty common player comp for Terrence Ferguson coming out. In fact, the most common one was Tyler Higbee. I view Ferguson as a super deep league stash. I don't think there's anything more. Davis Allen? I think he had a catch still last week. So the fact that there's a third tight end involved in some capacity, I don't know. I think I'd rather take a shot on several other backup-ish tight ends and whatnot. And I don't know, or a backup running back on my roster. I think Ferguson, even in like an FFPC 20-man tight end premium league, I still don't think Ferguson is necessarily like an above-average bench stash.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Just to add on to what Josh was saying there, one thing I noticed watching that game, and then, since it was the early game, I was able to really watch it and see the whole thing. And they were running a lot of 13 personnel, so they had 3 tight ends on the field a lot of the time. So that seemed to be kind of their answer for Puka being out, rather than trying to funnel things through Whittington or Tutu Atwell or anything like that. They just said, you know what, we got a lot of good tight ends. We're just going to run our offense this way. And clearly, Jacksonville was not ready for that.
Yeah, and just to add like sneaky ads, you're talking about other directions to go. The New Orleans backfield, obviously with Kendre Miller out, just keep an eye on those guys. You've got the rookie Neal, and then who's the other one that's there, Dan? Oh, wow. I'll come back to it.
Yeah, with Kendre out, it looks like Neal is probably going to be the next man up, but I think they did add somebody this week too.
Yeah, they had someone else. Snowman, you remind me, man. I know we talked about it. It'll come back to me. We'll bring it up. But let's go to Dan. One of our favorite rookie tight ends coming into the season was Colson Loveland. And this past weekend, I mean, overall his usage is continuing to rise. And he just looked like he was more involved in the offense to me. And he actually looked really good to me in that offense this past weekend. Are you starting him in tight end premium formats, or is he just kind of a hold and see for now?
That's really, roster dependent as to whether I'm starting him or not. But, what I saw was that last week, for the first time, he was able to get in some full practices. And as a result, even early in the game, they were using him more. And then in the fourth quarter, Cole Kmet went out with an injury. And it seems like that injury might keep him out at least this week. So, yeah, I think it's definitely, if you need some help at tight end, Loveland's a guy you can definitely get in there. I don't know if I'm confident enough, I'm not going to be starting him over, any tight end that I feel real good about. But if I'm, looking at a couple, 3 sketchy options, I'd rather just go ahead and put in Loveland and go with that unknown upside there.
I'm just looking at this, Josh. You know what? I'll go back to you with this one. We talked a bit about Gadsden. Obviously, put up a 150-yard eruption this past weekend. And is he a locked-in kind of tight end one for you moving forward? Do you think it's more like a matchup thing for him? How are you managing the young tight end moving forward?
So I think the concern with Gadsden is target competition. There's 3 solid wide receivers that the Chargers try to get the ball to each week. Herbert threw for 420 yards last week. We have to keep that in mind. Omarion Hampton returns in a couple weeks. They might start running more again. I think Gadsden right now, he looks like a guy where, if for some reason he's available in a tight end premium league, you drop heavy fab. Any deep league in general, if he's available, you drop heavy fab. Back-to-back games with 7 catches. But we generally don't like this profile when we look at team environment in terms of tight end with insane wide receiver target competition. That's just really not what we like. I think there's more risk here than a lot of people acknowledge. I think if he ends up just being the consistent 2 or 3 in this pass-heavy offense, or if one of the receivers goes down for a few weeks, sure, he can be a top 6 weekly option. I'd say the way I think about it is this. I like him rest of season better than I do right now still. Because he's a rookie, I think his role could increase. I think especially if the Chargers had receiver injuries, that really helps. So I think let's value him like a top 10 tight end rest of season, but not really rank him there quite yet, if that makes sense. I mean, we can rank him there this week with all the buys. But just in general, I just get really hesitant. We see this year after year after year. Oh, this tight end, he seems talented. He has a couple good weeks, but then what happens? He gets put back in the box because there is target competition. I don't think I've seen anything that leads me to believe the Chargers think he is significantly better than any of their 3 veteran receivers. I think he had a great game. Defenses might game plan against him more now, so I probably am actually more pessimistic than the average person, which is interesting because I am a diehard Chargers fan. So I think that's how I know I have a pretty reasonable take here, is I often like Chargers players, and then I have to check the bias. Here, knowing that I lean a little bit the other way, I feel pretty good about that stance because I watched the entire game. I watched him go off, and I still know that there are 3 receivers there with Hampton coming back soon.
Dan, let's go back to Chicago. I know Snowman was asking about Kyle Monangai earlier. He's a guy that you and I know, and just on FFPC was a stash for us. Just seeing how he was evolving, even getting ahead of Roshan Johnson in that offense earlier in the season, and we finally saw this past weekend. Obviously, Swift went off for 124 and a touchdown on the ground, but Monangai, came in with 13 carries, 81 yards, and got his own touchdown in that offense, got a couple catches for 13 yards as well. Do you think is he one of your favorite ads right now? I guess if he's still available on waivers. I'm always iffy with the waiver conversation because I find you'll see, go buy these guys on waivers, but then you go to your waivers and they're not there. But I think if Monangai's there, he's got to be one of your favorite, right, Dan? And what are your expectations from the young running back moving forward?
You are talking to the world's foremost holder of Kyle Monangai shares already. I was on him basically from the jump. As soon as he got drafted there, and we started getting the steady drumbeat of positive information from from Ben Johnson. He seemed very high on him all summer. So I just kept drafting him late in drafts, just kept loading up. He stayed on my bench, and now he's starting to pay off. He actually started the game this week. I don't think that there's necessarily, I don't think that means anything as regards to Swift, but what I think it means is that, we've got a situation here where it's kind of a Gibbs-Montgomery situation, and Swift is playing the Gibbs role. Monangai is starting to play the Montgomery role, and what that means is that it's going to be a little bit more of a split moving forward. Both backs are doing great things. I mean, you've got Caleb Williams, who is still developing, just to put it mildly. And I think that Ben Johnson wants to lean into this run game, and he has been leaning into the run game, especially this past week where we had rainy conditions, windy conditions, an opponent that was not providing too much, of a challenge. And so, they really brought out the running attack. I don't think it's going to be that good every week, but I think Monangai is at least startable in a flex on weeks where you have bye week issues or injury issues or whatever. And he's somebody that I'm holding really tight to because Swift has been also hurt. He's not practicing today. He's been practicing on a limited basis. They keep saying he's questionable going into games. He goes out and he plays well, and they don't really seem to be limiting him in any way other than they're just giving Monangai more of the load. So I think that's going to continue. I think it's a little bit of a Gibbs-Montgomery light situation here.
And even if it is matchup dependent, then the Ravens giving up the second most fantasy points to running backs so far this season. So not a bad matchup going into the weekend, especially with the questionable tag on Swift. I'll go back to you, Josh. Arizona, talking about another backfield that's a little more cloudy. Obviously, James Conner's out for the season, and this backfield just seems like it's up in the air. Every time we think we have the answer, we saw Bam Knight, we saw Michael Carter. Are any of these guys kind of worth stashing or starting moving forward? Or is this kind of like, maybe you could call it even a trap, right? Like whether you're spending money on waivers or throwing these guys in your lineup.
There we go. I clicked the mute button this time. We're doing it again. I'm still stashing Trey Benson, especially if there's an IR spot, of course. But just in general, outside of super shallow leagues, I want him on my bench. The other names you mentioned are pretty comical when we think prospect profile hype compared to last year's third-round pick, Trey Benson. So I think he is clearly the guy when healthy. But I think especially for this week with Bye-Mageddon, I'm interested in Bam Knight. Now I'm actually questioning. The Cardinals are on bye this week, huh?
Yeah, the Cardinals are on bye this week. So
I haven't looked at lineups yet. So
you've got one more week of Bam Knight in week 9 before Benson is eligible to come back.
So we will not be starting Bam Knight this week. I have him on a couple rosters. I was thinking, I will start him this week. That's right. They're one of the 6 teams on bye. So I do think he has at least that one more week 9 of relevance. What we saw in week 7 was that he led the Arizona running backs with 14 carries to Michael Carter's 7. He had 4 targets to Michael Carter's 2. He had 2 red zone carries to Michael Carter's 1. I think right now this is 2 weeks in a row where Bam Knight seems to have more promising usage than Michael Carter. So he's kind of the one where I'd hold and would be willing to flex him next week. But I think the main event here is still Benson. He's someone I've actively tried to trade for in a couple leagues simply because, again, we're talking about Amari DiMercado, Bam Knight. These guys are simply not anywhere close to the stratosphere of a Trey Benson. A Trey Benson is like a prized preseason. He was a prized top handcuff. These other guys, I think most fantasy gamers were not even sure they were on or would make the Cardinals roster. So Benson is the one that I have the most interest in.
Yeah, and he's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and it didn't have the best, production when he did get the opportunity earlier this season. They are on bye this week. They're back on Monday Night Football at Dallas, then at Seattle in week 10, and then at home against San Fran and Jacksonville, week 11 and 12. Dan, another young rookie running back that I'm happy to have on my bench was Woody Marks in Houston. He just looked, I mean, O-line aside, because to me, like, you kind of got to give some of these guys in Houston a pass with how horrible that offensive line is. And Woody Marks is one of those guys. They seem to really want to give him the ball, the rock, and he looks the part. He just, the holes are far in, what's that saying? Far and few, or whatever.
Yep.
Far and few between, the French kicking in there. But he, apart from that, he looked like someone that given the right game script, the right matchup, can give you some production. Is he a viable flex play for you, Dan? And we talked about Jalen Noel earlier, offering more like a deep league value moving forward. How do you play him versus the Jaden Higgins, who, like I said earlier, was kind of the darling out of these two coming into the season?
Yeah, I think with Marks, I mean, first off, you mentioned the offensive line, and you're exactly right. It is offensive. And when they were playing Seattle, it was like every time they tried a running play, basically Seattle was shoving the Houston offensive line backwards rather than the other way around. So It makes it tough for either running back there. I don't think Nick Chubb is dead yet, just because they do like to use him when they're ahead, and they're able to actually get some running lanes open, and kind of pound away with him. I think Chubb has the instincts, but he doesn't have the quicks to get to where he wants to get to when he needs to get there. And Woody Marks does not have those Nick Chubb instincts, and it's unfortunate, because if he did, then we'd really have something with him. But Chubb is going to be the guy that, if the Houston is, I think they're going to be in a favorable game script. They're going to be leading, trying to salt it away. I might lean a little bit more towards Chubb right now. And then Woody Marks, he's your guy if you think Houston is going to be playing from behind, because he is definitely the one that they use in the passing game a lot more often. And, so he's going to get more high-value touches in that situation. So don't particularly love either back, just because of the Houston offensive line, though. Noel right now looks like, since Kirk is out, he's the one who's kind of the biggest beneficiary. Him and Dalton Schultz are the biggest beneficiaries of Kirk being out. Schultz, I think, as I mentioned earlier, is very, very playable at tight end this week. And it's hard to say with Higgins exactly what's going to go on. I mean, with Nico Collins out, you would think they would be using Higgins more. It didn't really seem to, make much difference after Collins went out, but they didn't have that many plays. So, hopefully with a week to game plan, that will get Higgins involved a little bit more. But I think he's a little bit more of an unknown. We're not sure what we're going to see from him, and I feel a little bit more confident about what we might see from Noel and what we might see from Schultz.
Yeah, 4 for 77 with Noel, 7 targets, just behind Schultz and Collins, each getting 10 in that matchup against Seattle. Josh, we talked about kind of these, bottom of the barrel offenses, I guess you could say, after 7 weeks, looking at the Jets, the Raiders, and the Titans. Is there a single player you'd feel okay starting in a managed league in these next few weeks in either of these offenses?
I think it's just the Genty, Breece Hall. It's the running backs. I think Breece Hall's okay. I know he had the ankle nick. I believe he's all right. Until Garrett Wilson and Brock Bowers return, that's pretty much it. The Titans are no longer on my list. With Pollard and Spears, it's looking like a 55-45 split. Pretty disgusting to have a bottom 3 offense now with a running back committee. Tight end premium, I think Mason Taylor is the one I'm keeping my eyes on. I don't know if I'm really enthusiastically starting him right now. But with Tyrod Taylor, I think you're getting more pass attempts and more accuracy. And I'll just keep repeating, rookies ascend every year. I've done a lot of research on this. It's the only archetype of player where, on average, every single year the past decade after decade, these players get better as it goes along. Like the last 15, 20 years, it's the only archetype where you can look at splitting the season into quarters or halves, however you want to split it. The rookies get better with their usage. So Mason Taylor would kind of be the guy there. I think it's good that he's had back-to-back kind of disappointing weeks. So I'd say he's the one in tight end premium. But, I mean, my goodness. No Titans right now. No Titans.
Yeah, the Titans definitely disappointed. Pollard was one of those kind of, zero RB builds or hero RB build favorites where he was going in drafts going into the season. That whole offense just hasn't looked right. Mason Taylor, one of my favorite guys coming into the season, and obviously Fields having some trouble there, but the Bengals giving up the most points to the tight end position after 7 weeks. So you got to like that. If you are stuck in a jam and, with all the bye weeks going on, you have to play a jet. He's definitely a guy that you can lean on if you need it. Then Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter, I remember putting a post out in the offseason, reminding people about the Bengals. And remember when T. Higgins got there before Jamar Chase did and seemed like he was going to be, the wide receiver one there. And then Chase, they obviously, instead of going O-line, they went Chase. And then Chase came in and he's, the Jamar Chase that we know today. Not that there's anything wrong with T. Higgins these days, but Chase has definitely taken over kind of the wide receiver one in that offense. Is Travis Hunter doing that to Brian Thomas Jr.? Brian Thomas Jr. looks like he's been struggling coming into the season. I'm just wondering which one of these two guys would you rather have? This past weekend against LA, where the Jacksonville just looked horrible, Hunter getting 14 targets to Thomas's 7. Which one do you prefer moving forward?
I mean, I think the better, the better, more polished wide receiver is still BTJ. A big part of the problem with him against the Rams was basically he could not buy a target that was really in his zip code. It's like, for whatever reason, Trevor Lawrence seemed to be able to hit Travis Hunter. And then every time he threw to Brian Thomas Jr., it was like, he had to make some kind of circus catch, or at least a circus attempt to even try to make a catch. We were talking about that on Fantasy Empire earlier this week, and it's a lot of this stuff isn't necessarily Brian Thomas Jr.'s fault, but on the other hand, it just seems like he's really struggling. He and Trevor Lawrence are really struggling to connect. If they start using Travis Hunter more in the slot and they really focus on his development, yes, I think he can move forward. The rest of this year, I don't know. It could be 50-50 as to which one is the better one. But I think the more that Hunter becomes a weapon and that teams have to pay more attention to him, I think that's going to open up things for Brian Thomas Jr. a little bit more. So I don't have a great answer here. I'm just going to stick to my priors. I'm going down with the ship on Brian Thomas Jr., but I have a lot of Travis Hunter shares, and I'm definitely excited about them as well.
Yeah, BTJ could be sneaky buy right now, before they, if there is a bounce back there, he's definitely a guy that you could get at a good price right now. Josh, I'm going to go back to you with a tight end question. Kyle Pitts coming off of a 10-target game against San Francisco, put up 7 for 62. He's been a tight end one, border tight end one so far. Is he locked in tight end one moving forward? How are you playing him on your rosters?
Yeah, I'd say he's a tight end one. I like that Mooney. He's back healthy. Like we said, Pitts still out-targets him 10-5. We ideally need Pitts to stay ahead of Mooney because we've got Drake London there, and then Bijan's always going to get a significant amount of targets for a running back. Pitts is quietly on pace for 85 catches and over 800 yards this year. The problem is he only has one receiving touchdown. That's kind of been his problem year after year. I know that's been Trey McBride's problem. I don't know. He's probably fine. Like I remember George Kittle didn't catch a lot of touchdowns earlier in his career, and now he's kind of become a touchdown merchant plus, where he gets good usage, but he's also scoring a lot of touchdowns. Like I don't know. I don't really see Kyle Pitts scoring fewer touchdowns. I think even if the usage dips a tiny bit, he should score more touchdowns to offset it. So I'm still in. I think he's a plug and play, like every week starter for I think most Kyle Pitts managers at this point.
Dan, same team, Atlanta Falcons. Started off good for Penix against Tampa, put up 24, was a top 10 quarterback. He's had one other top 12 production game against Washington, disappointing against San Fran. I know you talked about him earlier, and that was actually, I think, the team where you brought in Flacco. Can you depend on him? Is he a super flex stash, or are you just passing on Penix right now? How are you managing the young quarterback?
Is this a home game for him or a road game for him? That's basically how I'm managing him. If it's a road game, he's probably on my bench if I can, and if it's a home game, I'm probably going to start him.
Well, they're at home to Miami this week, so you must be liking that.
Yeah,
for Miami,
that's a great situation for him. You know, assuming that he's healthy, he does have. He apparently got a little bit hurt against San Francisco. It sounds like he's probably going to play. You know, but I've got Kirk Cousins on speed dial just in case he doesn't.
Did you get his number when he was in Minnesota, Dan? Or
exactly, that's exactly it. Yep. So, yeah, I've got I've got Cousins on speed dial there, but yeah, Penix is somebody that I just don't feel real comfortable starting on the road, and you know, in general, I'm going to be looking a little bit sideways at Pitts and Mooney as well. If it happens to be a road game, you know, I'm going to be, you know, those are some places where I might have some options. If you've got Drake London, you know, you're pretty much starting him. I don't really have any teams where I have London where I going, oh yeah, I can afford to sit London. You know, I just got to take the good with the bad with him. But yeah, Pitts and Mooney, I think, you know, until this home road split proves to be a myth or something like that. I mean, you know, everything's real until it's not. You know, and right now it seems like that's what's going on with Penix, but you know, sometimes those things disappear as quickly as they appeared. You know, like Josh was talking about Trey McBride, you know, who was not scoring touchdowns, and then late last year he finally got himself a touchdown, and this year they've been coming a little bit easier. I mean, they're still not super frequent, but at least they're starting to come. You know, so that same thing could start happening with Penix. He's still very raw as a starter, still very new as a starter. And, you know, so maybe a little bit more comfort on the road, and, you know, all of a sudden we start to see those splits go away, and it's not as big a deal. And sorry, that was not rapid fire.
It's all good. It's all good, Dan. I'm watching the time. I know Josh has an out, but he's been generous with us. We should be able to get through this. Let's go to Harry Snowman. He's got a question about Fant. I'll answer first just because he's a guy I had added to my rosters or I was stashing. I know he's playing behind Gesicki, but this week I started him, gave you a nice 14 points, was a top tight end production that he gave you. And then he goes in against the Jets, who are giving up the 7 most points to the tight end position. Josh, do you agree with Noah Fant being a good pickup if he's still available on waivers?
I don't want to say too much because I have a bid in on him that I did earlier today in a league.
That's the problem with these earlier shows in the week, you know?
But yes, I don't remember exactly the injury Gesicki has. I know he's out for most, if not all, of the rest of the season now. And Flacco's playing pretty well. Obviously, Fant's upside is capped with Chase and Higgins. But, I mean, we've seen Jamar Chase miss time, like the broken hip a couple years ago. I think we all know, Higgins misses time almost every single year. So I think Fant, if either of them misses time, you're just like, oh, great, we have a top 5 tight end option this week. And I think in general, given that we have this terrible Bengals defense, paired with Flacco just kind of slinging it in a run game that prior to last week, I believe was averaging 50 yards per game, which is probably historically bad through 6 weeks for a team. So I think it all sets up well where Fant looks like the number 3 right now. I am buying into it. I will not say the fab bid. I hope I get him. But yes, I'm buying it.
I'll say this about Fant. I could have beaten JD in the Hardway Big Gorilla if I had noticed. I thought I had Fant in, and then I realized after Thursday, I forgot to put him in. 16.4 points from Fant versus what I got out of whoever I had in there at tight end would have made the difference. So
it's all right, Dan. I need those. That's probably my worst Big Gorilla team. So I'll take the wins anyway.
It's definitely my worst
in that league. Yeah, that's a tough league for sure.
That was the battle of the cellar dwellers right there. You and me.
I'll go back to you, Josh. I think all three of us can probably answer this one just because it's, I mean, I think we'd all agree there's nothing, you can't go wrong with stashing running backs in fantasy football. Maybe start it off with your favorite handcuff right now as we roll into week 8.
So based on market value, I looked at Fantasy Pros just to kind of confirm my suspicion. Obviously, that's not the arbiter of how every league operates, but he is the RB57 rest of season on Fantasy Pros. He's behind almost every other backup. This is Jaden Blue. I actually got him 2 weeks ago in an FFPC league. I bid, I think, 190 or 185. He was on waivers. Got him. There's no more Miles Sanders there. It's just Javonte and Jaden Blue. And we love this Dallas offense. Why wouldn't you want a supremely talented pass-catching back with speed paired with a top 3 passing offense? I don't know what's to like here. Do I think he's going to be a top 12 running back if Javonte goes down? No, probably not. A little undersized. But still, I mean, RB57, I think he's a weekly starter, especially in PPR leagues. If Javonte goes down, I'd say he's probably like he's probably my 12th to 15th favorite backup right now. But he's basically priced as if he's the absolute stone worst backup running back you could roster. So I think it's Jaden Blue. I think he's kind of like a top 18 to 20 option each week in that Dallas offense if Javonte goes down. And I don't know why we wouldn't want that. So I've got him on a lot of teams. I've tried to have him as like a trade throw-in where I do a 2-for-2 trade. And we're kind of swapping some good players. But really, I'm like, all right, let's get Jaden Blue over here. Lateral swap with the good players. Give me Blue. So that's kind of how I'm trading him. I think he's just egregiously underpriced by the market.
Dan, I usually regret it when I let you answer one of these ahead of me. Please don't make me regret it. Who's your favorite?
Go ahead.
I've
got about 3 answers here. So
all right, awesome. So Javonte Williams right now has the second highest rushing yards as a running back. The first one we talked about him earlier is Jonathan Taylor. So the guy I own the most on the FFPC is DJ Giddens, and that's the reason. If anything happens to JT, I love DJ Giddens, just the talent himself, the opportunity, the offensive line, how that offense is rolling. I think he slides right in and could even be a league winner. So I'll add that to the Jaden Blue. Dan, give us your 2 or 3 handcuffs right now.
Okay. I mean, I would have said Kyle Monange, but he's really moved into kind of a 1B role, or it seems that way. So I don't really think he's eligible. I don't know. Is it too sacrilegious for me to say Travion Henderson for a stash backup?
I mean, maybe. I mean, he's no, but you know what? It's a great trade target right now. I feel like is Travion Henderson because I mean, he's kind of. I mean, Ramondre is just taken over out there. We haven't seen Henderson, so maybe give us your thoughts on how you think that unfolds moving forward.
I mean, it's Stevenson's world. I don't know how it is that they can draft a running back in the second round with the skill set that Travion has, and now he's there's kind of Jennings guy at running back that actually got more touches than Travion Henderson last week, and I don't know. Mike Vrabel does not seem to like Henderson at all. Doesn't trust him in pass protection. Clearly, doesn't really seem to like to bring him into the game plan. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I now is the time to get Henderson if you ever can. Problem is, you're gonna pay a lot more for him than you pay for a backup running back. But I think the real answer to this is probably Tyler Algier, because if anything happens to Bijan, he's going to be in a great position. He's got a little bit of standalone value right now. I mean, basically, if you think it's going to win the game, if you think they're going to lose the game, you don't want any part of that. But if Bijan goes down, Algier is going to be a monster.
Josh, I know you had a note, so anytime you want to, if you have to go, just let me know and we can kind of keep rolling and close this out. We're almost done. We just have kind of like a quick hell no, hell yeah segment on some names. But if you have to go, I mean, give your plug, and that's no problem at all, because you've given us some valuable time here.
Yeah, I just looked. The SWAT team's outside my apartment. They said I've got 5 more minutes till they barge in. So we got 5 minutes. Let's knock this out.
Okay.
All right.
So let's go. You know what? Let's answer this question. Maybe we can each give a good name, and then we'll skip that last segment. Dan, who's your favorite top injured stash for second half run? We saw Rice come off of suspension. We're seeing guys coming back. Unfortunately, Evans came back, and he's back on injured. But are there guys right now? I think we mentioned a few throughout the show. But who's your favorite kind of guy right now who's injured but could come in this season and help fantasy players?
Yeah, I'm probably the worst guy to answer this question, because I am so leery of injured players. It seems like that there's always a lot longer ramp up, but I'll go with Aaron Jones. I think he's going to work right back into that offense, and he could be back as soon as this week. So that would be my answer.
Do you have someone, Josh? I know I didn't necessarily have this for you specifically, but do you have someone to add?
It would have been Aaron Jones. I think Jordan Mason's been pretty serviceable. I still don't think that's really the guy. I think also you might say, well, yes, but I think they want to kind of preserve Aaron Jones, if that matter, for the stretch run. He is just clearly the more talented running back out of the two. I think what's nice is I believe J.J. McCarthy is probably healthy right now, and they're going with Wentz, which I think is good. They are truly prioritizing. I think it's like I said about Jones, like saving him for the stretch run. I think this Vikings team wants to try to win this year, and they're not going to let someone like a J.J. McCarthy stop them. Wentz is enough, and I think Wentz and Jones, that's a pretty good skill set match. You get the veteran quarterback who's not as mobile as he used to be. You've got still one of the top pass catching backs, so that was my answer as well.
I'm with Snowman. I like Jaden Reed coming back in that Green Bay offense. I know Golden's been getting a little more and more attention, but I think like Snowman says, Jaden Reed comes in an offense that should keep rolling. And, we haven't necessarily seen anyone take control. I know Dubs is there and he's been, getting a lot of the volume, but I think Jaden Reed comes in and does, like Rob says, carve a role. So I like that as well. Josh, this has been great, man. It's been great having you on. Make sure you guys follow Josh at J Larky Tweets. Like I said earlier, some great content when it comes to sports betting, matchups, weekly matchups, a lot of data he's dropping on the regular. So make sure you follow him. Josh, anything to add with regards to where people can find you or what you have coming up?
No, that's good for now. I pride myself on trying to make complicated stats and analytics very easy to understand. And I think people get that each week with the different charts I put out. I try to make it as dumbed down as possible for people, not because I think people are stupid, nothing like that. It is simply because I know that most people want to take a few minutes to consume research. They might listen to a podcast for an hour, but when they want research, they are not like, all right, here we go. You spent 3 hours doing your research. I can't wait to spend 3 hours myself. No, they want the answer in 20, 30 seconds. And I think I do a decent job doing that. It is free on my Twitter or X, JLarky Tweets. So guys, thanks for having me on. I think we had another solid show. We got the Bimageddon show in, where I know we're workshopping this new Wednesday time because I had a weird work schedule this week. So thank you for that.
No, it's all good, man. Like I said, we appreciate you. We covered a lot of ground, and you do put out. I remember that. I mean, that's why we've had you on so many times. You have a good way of taking that data and making it very digestible for those out there, whether it's on X or on a show with us this week. We really appreciate you. Make sure you follow Josh. Guys, we're going to be back next week, and we're going to try to roll moving forward on Thursdays late morning, unless we're trying to appease a guest schedule or something like that. That's when we're going to try to bring you guys the goodness on the weekly. And the main reason is Dan and I just feel like by that time we have the most information. We're able to give you the most valuable kind of, read on certain players and certain situations out there so that you can roll into the following week with a good strategy and winning ways. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you guys in the chat for sure. If you guys are interested in joining the GOAT District team, whether it's behind the scenes or on camera or content creation or any of those aspects, make sure you reach out to me on the X Machine at GOAT District. Dan is always out there on the X Machine at Overhyped Sleeper, no E on the end. Dan, remind the people every Tuesday, is it Tuesday at 11? You guys roll on the Empire?
Yep, that's right. Fantasy Empire, every Tuesday, 11 o'clock in the morning. And we're just kind of going through the previous week and what's coming up this week and talking through all the player situations that need discussing. So, it's just basically four of us putting our heads together and trying to figure out a way forward, through whatever slop the fantasy gods happen to throw us for the week.
Yeah, great content, four guys that have skin in the game, and that's what we like here in the district. Appreciate you guys. Good luck. Week 8. We'll check you all later.
GOAT District, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offers the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be trading. And I always be trading. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.